Thank you. My name's Steve Giordano. I'm with Logic. We are a computer and IT managed services company, and I thank you for allowing me to come in and talk with you this morning. In talking with the FEBE people, they asked me to come back. I was here last August, and they asked me to change up the subject matter a little bit. So I offered, let's maybe talk about PCI requirements, processing credit cards. How many people process credit cards in their business? Any take credit cards, process them? Okay. There's specific things you need to do regarding your network and processing credit cards. I thought I would go through that. And then I thought I would give you an update on what's happening with security, with emails, and with the bad guys trying to get into your business. An update of what I talked about last year. So for compliance, there's a lot of compliance rules. PCI, there's HIPAA, there's Red Hat rules, there's Child Internet Protection Act, red flag rules, SOX, GLB, cyber insurance. If anybody buys cyber insurance, for example, if you buy that policy, those policies usually contain a list of things that you have to do in your network to be compliant with the policy. If you don't do those things and you have a breach, the policy will probably not pay you. The insurance company will probably not pay you. So today we thought we'd talk about PCI and processing credit cards. That's the PCI. It is a real document. It's the Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard document. It's a real document. It is 132 pages long. It has 12 requirements. Each section has this section on requirements, testing procedures, and guidance. And if you're using PCI compliant software from your merchant provider, that does not make you PCI compliant just because you're doing that. If you're not storing the credit cards in your network or not storing them, that does not make you PCI compliant. Right? You still have to manage and maintain your network in a specific manner. That's just one page at a 139. Now, when I go through this, I'm going to go at a 50,000 foot level. I'm not going to drill down to all the settings and whatnot. I don't want everybody's eyes to glaze over. But that's just to show you one of the pages in the 139 pages. So there's a lot of technical things that you've got to do. Requirement 1, for example, that's 9 pages, and it talks about firewalls. You got to have a firewall in your network, a hardware firewall. You cannot have a software firewall. Some of these, like Windows and whatnot, have Windows firewall. That's a software program. That does not make you PCI compliant by having it. You got to have a hardware firewall, and it has to be configured correctly. There's requirements for PCI to tell you how to configure that firewall, and it's got to be configured correctly. It's got to be placed in the network correctly. Requirement 2 is vendor supplied defaults. And what they mean by that is if you're buying a router, let's say from Cisco, that router will come to you with a username and a password already set up, right, to log into the router and configure it. And lots of times these companies will set them up so that the username and the password is admin or Cisco or whatever. You've got to change those passwords. You got to change it. You can't use the defaults, right? If you have multiple functions in your network, you have to have multiple servers. If you have a file server, you have to have a file server box. If you're running a web server in your business, you have to have a web server box, et cetera, et cetera. If you have an Exchange server, you have to have an Exchange server box. You can't have all this in one box. You have to have separate units. Protect stored cardholder data. So you got to limit the amount of cardholder data you're storing, and you got to have a retention time for how long you can store it. All right? Do not store the verification codes, do not store the PIN codes, and anything that you do store needs to be encrypted. Has to be encrypted. Encrypted transmissions. If you have a wireless in your network, that wireless needs to be encrypted, it needs to be set up properly, it needs to be configured in a certain manner for you to be PCI compliant. Antivirus. I like this one because I see this a lot. You have to have licensed antivirus. You can't use the free stuff. Licensed antivirus is required, and it's got to be configured properly. You got to update it, and you have to run scans on a regular basis. And it's all spelled out in the PCI document. You got to develop and maintain secure systems and applications. There's a lot of information on this. Basically, what it boils down to is you've got to keep your Windows programs and all your other programs updated. Microsoft issues Windows updates constantly, and you've got to keep those updates applied. You've got to keep your operating systems, Adobe, et cetera, whatever systems are running in your network, you've got to apply the security patches. You got to restrict access to cardholder data and cardholder processing on a need-to-know basis. So if you're processing credit cards, the areas where you're processing credit cards, only the people that are supposed to be processing that information should be exposed to that area and doing it.
I've always used Windows Defender. Is that, I mean, it's free based on Windows, but that's what I've always used.
You're supposed to use, PCI says you have to use a licensed piece of antivirus software.
Okay, and that's technically not because it's coming with Windows, basically.
Yes.
Okay, cool. And Windows had a big update yesterday. You were talking about the updates.
Windows has big updates
I know.
constantly. This one's interesting. Identify and authenticate access to your system. Right? Users have to have unique IDs to access the system. And the system is your network or your computers. You could be processing computers in one part of the business, but because you've got an entire network with maybe 20, 30, 40 computers in that network, other people are accessing the system that is processing those credit cards. So everybody's got to have a unique ID. I mean, I've seen businesses where all the office people have the same passwords. They all have the same passwords, so they can log into any machine. That's no good. You would fail. You have to revoke access for terminated users, change their passwords, lock them out, et cetera, delete the accounts. You have to have settings in your network for things like, if you try to log on to a unit, it locks you out after 6 failed attempts or less. Can't have it more than 6. Right? You've got to lock out after 15 idle minutes. So if I walk away from the computer and the computer's idle for 15 minutes, it locks out, and to get back on that machine, I've got to put in a password. Right? So it's got to be 15 minutes or less. Passwords are required for reactivation. You have to have a password policy. You got to specify length, complexity, how long you can have the password before you change it, et cetera. Passwords need to be changed every 90 days or less. You can't use a password after, you have to wait 4 changes until you can use the same password again. You can't reuse passwords. And you can't share passwords. You got to restrict physical access where the credit card processing is located, and if you're storing data, hard copy in files and whatnot, you got to restrict access to those areas to a need-to-know basis, and you have to have security going in and out of those areas, video cameras, locks, et cetera. You got to track and monitor all access to network resources, right? All resources, all computers, all servers. You have to look at the event logs. You have to look at error logs, et cetera. You have to have ways of accumulating and keeping that data and the ability to go back and look at it just in case you have a breach. And then you're supposed to look at those logs on a daily basis. You got to run internal vulnerability scans, which basically means if you're processing credit cards, your merchant service provider is going to want you to have penetration testing and PIN testing at least once a year. And you're also going to have to fill out a self-assessment. I had to do ours last February, and it's a process where they ask you a bunch of questions. You have to give them a bunch of answers, and if you're not compliant in certain areas, they want long explanations as to why you're not compliant and what you're going to do about it. Maintain security policy. This is interesting. You got to have a security manual. And the reason why I say, and that's interesting along with everything else, is I hear business owners tell me, oh, I process credit cards and I'm PCI compliant. I know a business that has a plaque or a certificate in their office that says they're PCI compliant from their merchant service provider, okay? And it says they're PCI compliant because they answered the questionnaire, right? And I know that a business owner isn't. And I very politely said, yeah, but you don't have a firewall. I said, if you have a breach, the first thing they're going to do is come in and they're going to ask you, can we see your security manual? And you're going to say, what security manual? Right there, you failed, right? So the whole point of this is there's a lot to PCI, there's a lot to being PCI compliant beyond using credit card compliant software and not storing credit card information. So what's the cost of non-compliance? If you're non-compliant, a lot of the banks and merchant service providers will charge you every month some fee, and it's usually not a high fee. At least that's not what I've been told. At least that's what I've been told. It's not a high fee. It's $18, $25, $28 a month for not being compliant. If you have a breach, that's a different story. So you're looking at $50 to $90 per credit card that has been compromised, right? $5,000 to $15,000 in compliance fees. Plus, if they come in and audit you, if you have a breach, they're going to stop you from taking credit cards for some period of time during the audit. Your business might be shut down. You're going to have loss of reputation. You could have civil litigation. You may have to incur costs to inform your customers that their credit cards have been compromised. You may have to pay for credit card monitoring and things like that. The average cost of a breach for a level 4 merchant, and I imagine that everybody in this room is a level 4 merchant, which means you're not processing that many cards, it's the lowest level, is $50,000. I read an article about 2 years ago. There was a Subway sandwich shop chain in the Northeast. A company owned, I think it was like 55 Subway sandwich shops. They had a breach. Their fees were over $135,000. So that's the cost of not being compliant and having a breach. Let's talk about network security. And that's what I talked about last August, how the bad guys are trying to get into your network, some of the things they're trying to do, and how to prevent it, what to look for. Just some information, the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center, I've got the 2015 numbers. I don't have the 2016 numbers yet. I was at their center last week and the numbers still aren't published. But this is just people that report to the center. This isn't, you know, everything that happened in the US. This is just people that report. In 2015, it was over $1 billion in losses. That's just people that report. In Ohio, we had over 6,000 complaints, almost 6,500 complaints to the center, and the losses in Ohio were $15.3 million, internet crime. Most of this penetration to your network, and they'll infiltrate your network, put in viruses and malware and stuff, most of it comes through email. I think in 2015, the FBI said like 84% of viruses entered networks through email. And it's social engineering. You're going to get an email, and it's going to give you a sense of urgency. There'll be a link, there'll be attachment. If you open that link, if you open the attachment, click on the link, it'll launch the malware. All right. Just to give you an idea of how much email, in January of this year, email globally, 269 billion email per day. 269 billion email per day are floating around the world. And if they would delete reply to all, you'd probably cut it in half. So anyway, when I was here last August, I don't know how many of you were here, but I went through the things to look for in an email that, you know, make the email look suspicious. So we're going to have a test today. So for those of you that can remember what we talked about in August, what's wrong with that email? Now, I did block out the from and the to because I want to keep the innocent innocent, so you're not going to see a lot of email addresses here. That one there contains a zip file. So the sense of urgency, or the thing that gets you on this email is, boy, you look terrible in this photo. So you get that email, and what do you want to do? You want to see how bad you look in the photo. And you click on the zip file, and that zip file will launch a virus. So social engineering, they get you to do things that you normally wouldn't do. Okay, this one. Can you all see it? SunTrust Bank. It's a email from SunTrust Bank, and they want you to update your account information, et cetera, et cetera. That's a phishing email. You click, and by the way, we do email filtering for customers, so we capture these things, and that's why I've got them up here to illustrate. So anybody want to take a gander? Take a guess at what's wrong with that one?
Validate your account.
Okay, but there's something else there.
It's the sending email address.
That's it, the sending email address. So that's coming from SunTrust Bank, right? But that email address is megador.jp. So if I go to megador.jp, that's megador.jp. That's not SunTrust Bank. They've copied SunTrust Bank's logo very nicely, but that's where that email is coming from. And as somebody said, you click on that validate your account, and what that will launch is a questionnaire, and they're going to want you to answer all kinds of questions, and the bad guys are getting that information. Okay, here's one. Now this is a real company in Cleveland, okay? I blocked out some of the email, the address. What we have here is, you have two suspicious links. There's a sense of urgency there. We sent you a copy of our agreement. So there's somewhat of a sense of urgency. There's a couple of links there that may or may not look right. So what we did was we clicked on the one that says download, and that's what popped up. Okay? Is it sdlegacy.com.my is a suspicious site. So we went to that site, and sure enough, it's a suspicious site. But if you were to click on that, it would take you to a place that would download some information, either download a virus or ask you for some information that you don't want to give up. Here's one for you. This is for LinkedIn. They want you to update your LinkedIn account and your passwords and whatnot. So anybody see what's the telltale giveaway on that one is? What's that?
Where it says click here, it's not a LinkedIn.
Well, even more so than that, look at the sender's email address. Is LinkedIn going to send you an email from a Yahoo account? I don't think so.
Well, it took you to get all the way to the end.
Yeah, right. Now, as I say this, I also want to go back and reference something I said back in August about the 2-second rule. They did a study, and they found that people, when they're surfing the internet, will click on a link or an attachment in anywhere from 2 to 5 seconds after something comes up on the screen. So we're clicking to the next thing before we're reading the whole page. You're not paying attention. That's the other way they get. You're not paying attention. So if you get that email, are you really going to sit there and say, oh, gee whiz, did that come from the right person? Is that no, you're clicking on that link they want you to click on. And if you click on that link, that's what happened when we clicked on that link, right? The antivirus caught it right away and says, that's a malicious link. Now, if you didn't have good antivirus, you may have gotten through to that link. Here's a good, this one's easy, come on. American Express, we have documents for you. Is American Express really going to send you an email from Jesus87@cox.net? No. No, that one's another malicious email. Okay, yeah, this is from USAA, the insurance company. They want you to give them some information on you. And now, I mean, if you can see a theme here. That's coming from foil.com and not from USAA. So if we go to foil.com, that is a real company. They're a metal fabricator in New England. That's a real company. And they misspelled safety. That's another giveaway with some of these emails. You'll see misspellings. You don't see it that much anymore. Years ago, you used to get a lot of misspellings, a lot of bad grammar. Right now, the emails are grammatically correct, and there's very, very little misspelling. But this one, they misspelled safety. And if you also look at USAA, the font is different than the rest of the email. This one here, this one came to me in our spam filter, and I did not order an iPhone, right? But it's telling me, the iPhone that you ordered, we're going to ship to you. So we checked it out, and that domain name does not exist. Okay, and the phone number, you'll see there's a few extra digits in that phone number. So those are some of the giveaways. This one was really good. That's actually Microsoft's domain. That's their domain. And it tells you that you need to confirm some stuff on your Microsoft Office 365 email account. Right? Now, I want you to look at the to address. The email is going to info at the company's name. The bad guys are now bombarding email addresses like info at, sales at, quotes at, HR at, because they know that those email addresses, for the most part, are alias email addresses. You get an email coming into info, and it could blow out to 10, 15 people in an organization. Now you've got 10, 15 people in the organization. Boy, somebody's going to open this thing. They're playing the numbers game. They're going after HR at, HR department at, because they know that HR people are used to getting emails from people that they don't know with attachments. resumes, CVs, things like that. So there's a better chance that they're going to open something. So anyway, this comes in through this customer, and you'll notice that it says, please check the IP address and the browser carefully. We'll look at the IP address, Saudi Arabia. That is an IP address in Saudi Arabia, by the way, right? So you're going to see your 365 account, you're going to see an IP address from Saudi Arabia, and you're going to click in there to confirm your password and settings, because you want to make sure that you're A-OK. And you're going to confirm that, and you're going to give the bad guys information. The nice thing about this was the customer that got this, they don't use Office 365. So when they got it, everybody that was on the list went, whoa, wait a minute, this isn't right. We're on Exchange, but we're not through 365. Here's one from Midwest Continental. This is a real company. The thing that sticks out on this one is, and I had to bleep out the expletives that were in this email. But it says, I've attached my card statement. Please get back to me ASAP. Look at the card statement. It's a Word document. So if that was the card statement, that person would have probably scanned it, and they would have sent it in a PDF, not a Word document. Clicking on that Word document launches a virus. Also, we checked the phone number. That phone number doesn't exist. But again, the 2-second rule, you're not paying attention. You're not going to spend time checking all this out. You're either going to delete it, hopefully, or you're going to click on it, and then you're in trouble. Okay, I'll walk you through one. So show you how we can determine some of this. Anybody want to take a guess as to what's wrong with that email, why that one is a red flag? There's 2 things on that email that jump out.
Email address. Sender.
That's one. There's one other thing that's missing. There's no CVS logo. If that was from CVS, their logo would be all over that thing. Okay, so those are the 2 things that caught our attention. Obviously, it was caught in a spam filter, but when we looked at the email, those are the 2 things that caught our attention. Yeah, Chris?
Also on the email, you'll get those and it'll say unsubscribe. Click here. I imagine that's, I mean, is it then ultimately if you click unsubscribe, now they know they got a good email address?
Right, and that's the other thing. I recommend that when you get these email addresses, these emails, you delete them. You do not unsubscribe. The reason being is we've seen it where they will bombard a business with emails. Bombard it. J. Smith at J.Smith, John Smith, John Space Smith. They're looking for a real person. So if you unsubscribe, you've just told the bad guy, hey, I'm real. If an email comes into info at, and it goes out to a dozen people, and you answer that email, it doesn't come back from info at, it comes back from you. So if if an email hits on my business and it's info at, and it comes to Steve, and I unsubscribe or I answer it, it comes back from Steve. It doesn't come back from info at. So we recommend don't unsubscribe. Do not unsubscribe, because you just told them you're a real person. So anyway, that's what we see on that email. I mean, got caught in the spam filter, and we looked at it and we said, oh yeah, the email address, the sender's address, it should be from cvs.com or whatever CVS uses, and there's no CVS logo. So we started checking into it, and here's what we see. All right, we'll start with the email address. We go to a place, and anybody in this room can do this if you're so inclined and you have time. You go to a site called MXToolbox, and you type in the domain name. So we went to MXToolbox and we typed in that domain name, and guess what? Doesn't exist. Now, MX records are the records that point email in the internet world. You have to have MX records so it tells the world where to send that email. There's no MX records for this. So then we go into what's called Who Is. So you can go to Who Is, and you type in the domain name. Again, we typed in the, impredh.com, and Who Is a registered domain. It's registered. And a Mr. Robert Brainerd in Hardesty Street, Albany, New York, that phone number, there's his email address. He owns that domain. He registered it and he owns it. And I'm looking at it, but there's no registrant organization. Why isn't he with CVS? And why is it Hardesty Street in Albany, New York? So I went to Google Earth, Google Maps, and MapQuest. Guess what? That address doesn't exist. There's no Hardesty Street in Albany, New York. So then we went to reverse phone number lookup. That's a mobile phone. It's a real phone number, but it's a mobile phone. So then we looked at, let's look at Rob's email address, disowcre.com. He's got his email, or his email address there. So again, we go to MXToolbox. Guess what? There's no MX records for that domain. Then we go to who is for that domain. It's available. I could buy it. He doesn't own it. I can buy it. So there's all the red flags that support that email being captured. That's bogus. That gift certificate is bogus. So we have not had a chance to actually click on the area of the email that gets us the certificate from CVS. We have a sacrificial system in our business where we test all these things, and in case they really are bad, it doesn't mess up the rest of our network. And that system is being used on another project right now. Just to let you know, this morning, before I left the business, we got another one of these emails captured, but the email came in from cvsrewards.com. But the rewards was spelled REWARDZ.com. And I did look that up, and it's fake. So they're getting better, and they refine this stuff. Yes?
This is a little off a little bit, but if I'm looking through email on my iPad and there's that move to junk, does that put it into your own built-in little spam filter there?
It just puts it in another folder, then you've got to delete the junk.
So it doesn't block them from future,
No.
I thought it was maybe an alternative to unsubscribe.
No. That's the one that did come in. And that one is, as you said, CVS Rewards with a Z. And the only thing I was able to do this one before I had to leave the office this morning was go to Who Is. And that domain name is owned by James Wilson. Again, no organization. He lives on Ivy Grove in Dallas, Georgia. He's got a Gmail address. And I was able to go to MapQuest and look at the address, and it's a residential street. I was not able to go to I just didn't have the time to go to MXToolbox, et cetera, but I'm 99% sure that is also a bogus email. We'll talk about ransomware real quick. Ransomware is the viruses that get on your computer and they lock your computer up. It encrypts all the data, and you have to pay a ransom to get your data back. The occurrences of ransomware are increasing every year. You'll see the yellow bars are increasing. I do not have, unfortunately, 2016, but from what I've read, 2016 was a very bad year. It increased over 2015, and they expect it to be even greater this year.
As more of the companies move to clouds, are those more secure?
The cloud itself will be more secure than your network. Not you personally, Andy,
Yeah.
but a business's network. Normally, a cloud application itself is more secure. They're in data centers, and I've been in those data centers that are incredibly secure. The thing that a business owner needs to understand is, even though you're in the cloud, and I'll go back to my PCI talk, because they'll say, okay, I'm using merchant services, I'm not storing any data and whatnot. But if I put on your computer what's called a keystroke logger or a screen scraper, I can literally pick up all your keystrokes. So your data is being stored in the cloud, but you still have that transaction. And the actual transaction that you're doing on your computer needs to be secure. So yes, your data is secure out there, but they can still intercept that transaction. Just some highlights on it. California hospital paid $17,000. A school system in PA paid $24,000. There was an incident in the police department in Texas. A Cleveland company that I know paid over $10,000. There's a variant of that ransomware that actually determines the value. It tries to determine the value of the data before it'll attack your machine, and then it tries to determine how valuable that data is, and then it assigns the ransom. And the FBI in 2015 said that it cost us about 24 million bucks. The way you prevent ransomware is you put good spam filtering, because most of this, but not all of it, comes through email. So you better have good spam filtering in your email incoming. You need good licensed antivirus, and you have to have good backups. And you have to have the backup done in a certain way. The Cleveland company that I know of, they were doing backups, but they were not doing it properly, and it got the backup. So it got the server and it got the backup. We also know of an incident where it migrated to a customer's Dropbox account and it encrypted the data in Dropbox. So you got to be careful with your offline stuff.
I was just going to say that recently I discovered that the IRS got hacked, and my information and my wife's information, somebody got her money. They didn't get mine because apparently their deposit was full, and so it came to my address with my name spelled wrong. So we had to do all kinds of stuff to, contact the IRS, wait about an hour by the time we finally got someone to help and send all the paperwork. But apparently this happened to a lot of people. So they actually hacked the IRS.
Oh, they're trying to hack the State Department, the White House, the Pentagon. I mean, any major corporation. You can see what happened to GE, Sony, Target, etc. I get the question, why do these guys do this? In October of last year, 14 million ransomware viruses were sent out in the course of 6 hours. 14 million. So think about it. If 1% of those 14 million clicked on the link or opened the attachment that was associated with that virus, 140,000 people were infected, okay? If just 1% of the 140,000 paid the ransom, and the ransom was $360, the bad guy made over $500,000. It's nice work if you can get it. That's why they do it. It's a numbers game. Talk about antivirus. We were involved in this incident. This company has antivirus, and it's a licensed version. And ransomware got to their server. We pulled the server, they called us in, we pulled the server, and we brought it in, we put it on our system to try to clean it up. As soon as we put it on our system, that's what we got. As soon as we put it on, boom, and our antivirus got it. It found it. Unfortunately, everything was encrypted, the data was all encrypted, so there was nothing we could do about it. But if they had proper antivirus on there, it could have and probably would have caught that one. Now, I can't say that antivirus is going to catch it every time, but having licensed antivirus is the way to go. And as you'll see, it says Trojan horse ransom. Let's talk about Apple real quick. I'm a big NCAA basketball guy, and during last weeks and the week before last and during the tournament, I saw several commercials, and the commercial said, Apple PCs do not get Apple PCs do not get PC viruses. Apple laptops do not get PC viruses. That was the statement. And they're absolutely correct. Apples don't. They don't get PC viruses. They get Apple viruses. And those are the viruses that are specifically designed to go after Apple. Those are the specific ones. In 2016, if you read the last bullet point there, in March of 2016, they discovered a ransomware virus that is specifically written to target Apple machines. So Apples are not immune to this. One of the reasons why they don't go after Apples as much is because there's not that many Apples in business. Why you rob a bank because that's where the money is. You go after Windows PC because businesses use Windows PC. We manage hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of computers. Less than 20 of them are Apples. Have you seen this virus now? It's pretty easy to get past it, where it pops up on your screen and says your machine's infected. Call this 800 number. And our technicians are standing by to help you. We usually get a call about twice, 2-3 times a month on this. And we got a call from a company where they had one Apple in the business, and they got that on the Apple. And it said, Apple technicians are standing by to help you. And by the way, if you ever get that virus where it pops up, your machine will be locked up, and they want you to call that number, and it'll say, do not turn your machine off. What you want to do, turn your machine off. That breaks the connection back to the bad guys. And they may have it locked up to the point where you can't do a software power down. You may have to hit the power button and do a hard stop, but do it. And when you reboot back up, it'll be gone. But whatever you do, don't call that number. I want to talk real quick about passwords. Passwords are very important. I've read articles where it says, passwords are a thing of the past, et cetera, et cetera. Right now, they're still the keys to the kingdom because usernames, in many cases, are easy. Because usernames are your email address. A lot of companies, when they say establish an account, what do they want you to put as your username? Your email address. So guard your passwords. Passwords should be complex. They should be 7 or more characters. They should be alpha. They should be numeric, uppercase, lowercase, have a symbol. A lot of companies are moving to 10 characters. Some are going to 12, and I'll show you why. Never use anything that can be easily associated with you, like your birth date, your address, your telephone number, your kid's birthday, your dog's pet's name, whatever. And be careful what you put on social media, because the bad guys are trolling social media, looking at people's accounts, and they're pulling all this information, and they can associate it with you and try to crack your password. How easy a password to crack? Many, many years ago, I'm at a company, and we're working on an issue. It was the first time we're visiting this company. And I'm there with the president of the company, and one of my guys is with me, and they had an issue, and we had to get onto the server. So we're standing in the server room, and I'm talking with the president. My technician's sitting there, and he's trying to log into the server. And the screen comes up to sign on, and he says, "What's the password?" And the owner, and I asked the president of the company, I said, "Do you have the password, the admin password to the server?" He said, "No, let me get it." And he goes to walk out of the server room. It's a true story. He goes to walk out of the server room. By the time he gets to the door, my technician says, "Never mind, I got it." The president froze. The password was the name of the company, 123. My guy just guessed it. He just sat there, and while we're talking, he's just trying different things, and he got the password. There's some trivia for you. This is the most popular password of 2016. This is very, very imaginative. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is the most popular. And then they got the real hard one after that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So those are some of the most popular passwords in 2016. Okay, they need to be 7 characters. Let's do the math. Let's just say you have a 6-character password, and for simplicity, for this example, let's say you're going to use just alpha characters, lowercase, and numbers, right? So you got 36 combinations, which is over 2 billion possible passwords. If you have an automated password cracker that can apply 1 million passwords per second, you can crack that password in 36 minutes. If you increase this field to 7, remember, alpha, lowercase, numbers. If you just increase it by one field, 78 billion, 1 million per second, it'll take you 22 hours to crack the password. Now, why are they going to 10 characters or more? Okay, let's go to 10 characters or more. Very complex. You have to have uppercase. You have to have lowercase. You have to have numeric and a symbol. So now you have 52 alpha, right? Uppercase, lowercase. You have 10 numeric. And let's just pick 8 symbols. You could probably pull more, but let's just pick 8 symbols. That's 70 characters possibilities for each position, which comes up to that big number. And I don't even know what that number is called. And for those that like scientific notation, it's 2.8 times 10 to the 18th power. And actually, it's bigger than that. It's 2.846 something. Anybody's got Office 365, that's the web. If you could be on Outlook, that's the web access to 365. You go to portal.office.com, that's what pops up. You put in your email address and your password, and you're in. So if I know your password, if I know your email, and I can figure out your email pretty quick, especially if you're in a company. The format's the same. It's either first initial, last name, or first name. Once you figure out one, you got them all, right? So I go to portal.office.com. Anybody can do this. You put in a person's email address, and then guess what? You start guessing passwords. That's why you need complex passwords. Ask John Podesta. Okay, that's what happened to him. They sent him a phishing email. He probably got it from somebody he thought he knew, and he gave up his password. Now I don't know if he had 365, but there's ways around that. When you go to MXToolbox, which I told you about before to verify that there's an email out there, this is what I didn't show you before. So I went to, and I did Lorain County Community College's domain address, was it LorainCCC.org. And guess what? It tells me that they're on Office 365. The world knows that. Anybody can do that. So now that I know that they're on Office 365, I can put in anybody from Lorain County Community College, go to portal.office.com and start pumping in passwords. And as soon as I hit the right password, I'm into the email. I am in your email. I'm looking at your inbox, your outbox. It's just like you're sitting at your desk and you're in the email. So then what we decided to do was I blocked out the domain name, but we went to a different customer company and we put in their domain name in MXToolbox. And guess what? It tells me the email is provided by Network Solutions. If I were to put in your email, Andy, will probably tell me where you got your email. It's anybody in this room. MXToolbox will tell you where you got the email. So now I know where the email is at. I can look up the IP addresses. I can look up the domain servers, et cetera, and I can start guessing passwords, guessing emails, and cracking this stuff. So you gotta protect it.
Would you suggest that those of us who are with the college and have the 365, that we change our password name on that one if we have that, we use that same password on other accounts?
Yes.
And that will break them from finding out.
It would break the pattern because if you use the same password across multiple accounts, if they find it with one account, bad guys will start going after everything that you're associated with. And then the other thing is change your passwords every once in a while. Every couple of weeks, or you should change your passwords, regardless of whether you're using 365 or not. I pick on 365 because it's easy. To get to the Network Solutions servers or the GoDaddy servers or some of these other services that offer email, it's a little bit more difficult, but trust me, the bad guys can do it pretty easy. Yes?
So I tend to be pretty leery of those password managers. I just wonder how long is it going to be till they start cracking those, and then they have everything.
Well, you're right. And the other thing with the password managers is you don't forget that password because it's got one password for you, and then all your passwords are inside that password manager. So you've got to make sure that you don't forget the password.
How hard is it to beat like the fingerprint scan on the iPhones?
They've hacked that, by the way.
Have they?
Yes, they've hacked it. From what I've read, they've hacked the fingerprint scanner and the retina scanner because when you do that, the software says, okay, this is Steve, and it sends a signal. They've intercepted that signal so that when I do that, if I've got that, they can intercept that signal and then send that signal even if it's the wrong thumbprint or fingerprint.
So it's not more secure?
It's more secure, but it can be hacked, and it has been hacked. There's a saying, if it has an IP address, it can be hacked. When I was here last time, I talked about, the Buick commercial where the guy and the girl are sitting on the beach, and she looks at her husband, and she says, "Did you lock the Buick?" And he's sitting there, "Yeah, I locked the Buick." And he goes on his cell phone, the smartphone, and he locks the Buick from half a world away. That cell phone is talking to that Buick and finding that Buick because that Buick has an IP address. And there's a saying, if it has an IP address, it can be hacked.
So if you get one of those ransomwares that shuts your computer down and says you have to pay $10,000 or whatever, if you do have a backup, that and your backup is fine, I assume you don't have to pay it then.
Correct.
Because
you don't have to pay it. You don't have to pay it. If you have a good backup. The thing about the ransomware viruses is if the way the ransomware virus usually hits a network is it will come in on a individual's computer because that individual did something and it allowed the ransomware in. It will encrypt everything on that PC, and it will very quickly migrate to the server and encrypt everything on the server. If you have a memory stick that happens to be plugged in or a portable hard drive that's plugged into that computer, it'll encrypt that portable hard drive or memory stick. If you have portable devices connected to the server, it'll encrypt that also. So you've got to be careful about how you do your data backup so that it protects the data backup. But if you do have a good backup, you've got to rebuild the machine, load the data back on, and you're good to go. It usually only affects the data. It does not affect the operating system, the drivers, and things like that. It just goes after the data. And what it's doing is it's looking for certain file extensions like .doc, .xls, .pdfs. .qbw, which is your QuickBooks data. So it goes after those. We've seen it hit a company and a whole bunch of data was not encrypted. And they have special ticket printers. They go to trade shows and they've got these zebra printers that print tickets. And they designed the tickets, and the file extension was a crazy file extension we had never seen before. And obviously the ransomware doesn't recognize the file extension, so it encrypted all the Word documents and everything, but it left the ticket stuff fine.